Part the First, Chapter 10 of Dick Sands, the Boy Captain. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Alex E. Talander, Davis, California. Dick Sands, the Boy Captain, by Jules Verne. Translated by Ellen E. Frewer. Part the First, Chapter 10, The New Crew. Dick Sands, captain of the Pilgrim, would not lose a moment in getting his ship under sail. His prime object was to land his passengers safely at Valparaiso or some other American port, and to accomplish his purpose it was in the first place necessary that he should ascertain the schooner's rate of speed and the direction that she was taking. This information was to be attained readily enough by means of the log and compass, and the result of each day's observations would be entered regularly on the chart. The log on board was a patent log, with a dial plate and screw, by means of which the distance that is travelled could be measured accurately for any infinite time. It was an instrument so simple that the negroes were very soon taught its use. The slight error in the reckoning caused by the action of the currents could only be rectified by astronomical observations, which, as already had been stated, were beyond Dick's attainments to make. The idea more than once crossed Dick's mind whether he would not take the Pilgrim back again to New Zealand. The distance was considerably less than it was to America, and had the wind remained in the quarter whence it had been blowing so long, it is more than likely he would have determined to retrace his course. But as the wind had now veered to the north-west, and there was every probability that it was settled for a time, he came to the conclusion that he had better take advantage of it and persevere in making his way towards the east. Accordingly he lost no time in putting his ship before the wind. On a schooner the foremast usually carries 4 square sails, on the lower mast a foresail, and on the topmast a topsail. On the top-gallant a top-gallant sail and a royal. The mainmast carries only a mainsail and a topsail. Between the masts upon the forestays can be hoisted a triple tier of triangular sails, while the bowsprit with its jib boom will carry the 3 jibs. The jibs, the mainsail, the main topsail, and the staysails are all managed with comparative ease, because they can be hoisted from the deck without the necessity of ascending the mast to let fly the robbins, by which they are fastened to the yards. With the sails on the foremast it is altogether a more difficult business. In order either to unfurl them, to take them in, or to reef them, it is necessary for a man to clamber up by the shrouds, either to the foretop or to the top-gallant cross-trees, and thence mounting by loose ropes extended below the yards, to hold on by one hand whilst he does his work with the other. The operation requires alike the head and arm of an experienced mariner, and when a fresh breeze has been blowing, it is a casualty far more uncommon that a sailor, confused by the flapping of the canvas and the pitching of the vessel, should be blown overboard in the act. For the unpractised negroes the danger would necessarily be very great. However, the wind at present was very moderate, and the ship ploughed her way over the waves without any violent oscillations. At the time when Dick Sands, in obedience to the signal he received from Captain Hull, proceeded to make his way to the scene of the disaster, the Pilgrim as she lay to was carrying only her jibs, mainsail, foresail, and foretopsail. In order therefore to put her as near as possible to the wind, it had been nearly necessary to counterbrace the foresail yard, a manoeuvre in which the negroes had rendered all the assistance that was necessary. It was requisite now to do something more. To enable him to get straight before the wind, Dick wanted to increase his sail, and was desirous of hoisting the top-gallant, the royal, the main topsail, and the staysails. He was himself standing at the wheel. "Now, my men," he shouted at the negroes, "I want your help. Do exactly as I tell you. Bear away, Tom." Tom looked puzzled. "Bear away. Unfasten that rope, I mean. And Bat, come along. Do the same as Tom." The men did what they were bidden. "That's right," continued Dick, and calling to Hercules said, "Now, Hercules, a good strong pull." To give such a direction to Hercules was somewhat imprudent. The rigging creaked again under his giant strength. "Gently, gently, my good fellow," said Dick, laughing. "You will have the mast down." "I declare I hardly touched the rope," answered Hercules. "Well, next time you must only pretend to touch it," said Dick, and continuing his orders, shouted, "Now slacken, let fly, make fast, now brace in the yards. All right, that's capital." The yards were loosened, the foresails turned slowly round, and catching the breeze, gave a slight impetus to the ship. Dick's next orders were for the jib sheets to be set free, and then he called the men to the stern. "Now," said he, "we must look to the mainmast, but take care, Hercules, not to have it down." "I will be as careful as possible, Mr. Dick," submissively replied Hercules, as though he were afraid to commit himself to any rash promise. The manoeuvre was simple enough. The main sheet was gradually slackened, the great sail took the wind and added its powerful action to that of the foresails. The main topsail was next brought to bear. It was only clewed up, so that there was nothing to do except to pull the halyards, haul it aboard the tack, and unfurl it. But in pulling at the halyards the muscular energy of Hercules, which was supplemented by that of Actæon, not to forget little Jack, who had volunteered his assistance,
proved to be overpowering, and the rope snapped in two. All three of them, of course, fell flat upon the deck, but fortunately neither of them was hurt, and Jack laughed heartily at his tumble as an excellent joke. "Up with you!" cried Captain Dick. "There's no harm done. Splice the rope, and haul away more gently next time." It took but a few minutes to execute the order, and the "Pilgrim" was soon sailing away rapidly with her head to the east. "Well done, my friends!" said Dick, who had not left his post at the helm. "You will be first-rate sailors before the end of the voyage." "We shall do our best, I promise you, Captain Sands," replied Tom, making it a point to give the young commander his proper title. Mrs. Weldon also congratulated the new crew upon the success of their first attempt. "I believe it was Master Jack who broke that rope," said Hercules, with a slight twinkle in his eye. "He is very strong, I can tell you." Jack looked as though he thoroughly appreciated the compliment, and evidenced his satisfaction by giving his huge friend a hearty shake of the hand. There were still several sails that were not yet set. Running well before the wind as the "Pilgrim" was, Dick nevertheless felt that the gallant, royal, and staysails, if brought into service, would materially assist her progress, and he determined not to dispense with their help. The staysails could be hoisted from below, but to bring the gallant and royal into play demanded more experience than any of his crew had had. Knowing that he could not entrust the task to them, and yet resolved not to be balked of his wish to set them, he undertook the task himself. He first put Tom to the helm, showing him how to keep the schooner's head in the right direction, and having placed the other four of the royal and top gallant halyards, proceeded to mount the foremast. To clamber up the fore shrouds and the top shrouds under the cross trees was mere child's play to the active apprentice. In a few minutes he had unfurled the top gallant sail, mounted to the royal yard, unfurled the royal, again reached the cross trees, and having caught hold of one of the starboard backstays, had descended to the deck. There he gave the necessary directions, and the two sails were made fast, and both yards braced. Nor did this content him. The staysails were set between the masts, and thus the "Pilgrim" was running along, crowded to the full with all her canvas. The only additional sails which Dick could possibly have employed would have been some studding sails to larboard, but as the setting of these was a matter of some difficulty, and they were not always readily struck in the case of a sudden squall, he contented himself without them. Again he took his place at the helm. The breeze was manifestly freshening, and the "Pilgrim," almost imperceptibly heeling to starboard, glided rapidly along the surface of the water, leaving behind her a wake, smooth and clean, that bore plain witness to the true adjustment of her water line. "This is good progress, Mrs. Weldon," he said. "May Heaven grant the wind and weather may continue thus favourable." The lady in silence shook the boy's hand, and then, worn out with the excitement of the past hours, went to her cabin, where she lay down and fell into a troubled doze. The new crew remained on watch. They were stationed on the forecastle, in readiness to make any alteration which the sails might require. But the wind was so steady and unshifting that no need arose for their services. And Cousin Benedict? All this time where was he? And what had he been doing? He was sitting in his cabin. He had a magnifying glass in his hand, and was studying an articulata of the order Orthoptera, an insect of the Blattidae family. Its characteristics are a roundish body, rather long wings, flat elytra, and a head hidden by the prothorax. He had been on deck at the time of the calamity. The ill-fated captain with the crew had been drowned before his very eyes, but he said nothing. Not that he was unmoved. To think that he was not struck with horror would be to libel his kind and pitying nature. His sympathy was aroused, especially for his cousin. He pressed her hand warmly as if he would assure her of his truest commiseration, but he said nothing. He hurried off towards his cabin, and who shall deny that it was to devise some wonderfully energetic measures that he would take in consequence of this melancholy event. Passing the kitchen, however, he caught sight of Negoro in the act of crushing a blatta, an American species of cockroach. He broke out in a storm of invective, and in tones of indignation demanded the surrender of the insect, which Negoro made with cool contempt. In a moment Captain Hull and his partners in death were all forgotten. The enthusiast had secured a prize with which he hastened to his own little compartment, where he was soon absorbed in proving to his own satisfaction, in opposition to the opinion of other entomologists, that the blattae of the Phoraspous species, which are remarkable for their colours, differ in their habits from blattae of the ordinary sort. For the remainder of the day perfect order reigned on board the "Pilgrim." Though they were unable to shake off the sickening feeling of horror roused by the frightful disaster, and felt that they had sustained a startling shock, all the passengers seemed mechanically to fall into their usual routine. Dick Sands, though avowedly at the wheel, seemed to be everywhere, with an eye for everything, and his amateur crew obeyed him readily, and with the promptness of a willing activity. Negoro made no further overt attempt to question the young captain's authority, but remained shut in his kitchen. Dick made no secret of his determination to place the cook in close confinement if he exhibited any future sign of insubordination. Hercules was ready to carry him off bodily to the hold, and old Nan was equally ready to take his place in the cooking department. Probably Negoro was aware of all this. At any rate, he did not seem disposed to give any further cause of offence at present. As the day advanced the wind continued